They built a civilization in the harshest place on Earth, then just disappeared. What truly happened to the Vikings of Greenland? Today, we're not just telling a story. We're trying to solve one of history's greatest cold cases. Imagine a world where the bravest, most ambitious explorers stared down the abyss of the unknown, pushed the boundaries of the habitable world, and carved out a home on a vast, icy island. That's the captivating, yet ultimately tragic, tale of the Viking civilization in Greenland. For centuries, these intrepid Norse settlers thrived against all odds, only to vanish without a trace. Their fate remains one of history's most compelling puzzles, leaving historians and archaeologists to grapple with a question that echoes across 1,000 years. Why did they leave? Or did they simply cease to exist? Our journey begins in the late 10th century, a time when the Norse spirit of exploration was at its peak. The year is roughly 985 AD, and a man named Eric Thorvaldsson, better known as Eric the Red, sails west from Iceland, banished for manslaughter. He wasn't just looking for a new home. He was looking for a fresh start, an unclaimed territory rumored to exist far to the west. What he found was an island so immense, so starkly beautiful, that it must have felt like the edge of the world. And to make it sound appealing to future settlers, he gave it the most deceptive name he could conjure: Greenland. A brilliant marketing move, if you ask me, for a place that was, and largely still is, very much covered in ice. Eric and his followers weren't chasing sun-drenched beaches. They were practical people, seeking land for farming, pastures for their livestock, and resources like timber, even if limited, and hunting grounds. These were the necessities for a flourishing community back then. What they achieved was nothing short of miraculous. They established two main settlements: the Eastern Settlement, near what we now know as Qaqortoq, and the Western Settlement, a bit further north. For nearly 500 years, these remote outposts weren't just surviving, they were flourishing, developing a surprisingly sophisticated society in a place that today feels utterly inhospitable. Picture it. Over 5,000 people living across hundreds of farms. They built sturdy longhouses, some quite grand, using turf and stone to insulate against the biting winds. They brought their cattle, sheep, and goats, raising them in narrow, sheltered fjords where grass could grow. Imagine the sheer effort involved in maintaining these farms, milking cows in freezing temperatures, shearing sheep for wool to make clothes. This wasn't just subsistence. It was a way of life built on deep agricultural knowledge passed down through generations. But they weren't just farmers. The sea was their lifeline. They hunted seals for meat, blubber, and skins. Walruses were incredibly valuable, hunted for their ivory tusks, which were a luxury item in medieval Europe, and their tough hides. Whales, when found, were a massive windfall, providing immense amounts of food and oil. Now, it's important to remember that the Vikings weren't alone on this vast island. At some point, they encountered the indigenous Inuit people, whom they called Skraelings. The nature of their relationship is still debated. Some evidence suggests periods of trade and interaction, while other accounts hint at conflict and mistrust. Imagine two vastly different cultures, one arriving by longship from the east, the other mastering the Arctic environment for millennia, suddenly sharing the same unforgiving landscape. It's a clash of worlds, and it undoubtedly played a role in the unfolding story. The Viking presence in Greenland is a testament to human resilience. They successfully navigated the harsh Arctic conditions, adapting their building techniques, their farming methods, and their hunting strategies to the unique environment. They weren't just isolated homesteaders. They were connected to the wider European world through extensive trade networks. Their ships, laden with precious walrus ivory, polar bear furs, and even live gyrfalcons, would sail back to Norway, Iceland, and even further south. In return, they imported essential goods they couldn't produce themselves: iron for tools and weapons, timber for building and repairs, and even church bells for their growing Christian communities. Think about the risk involved in these voyages. Sailing across vast, storm-tossed seas, relying on nothing but the stars and their experience. It highlights just how vital this connection to Europe was. But survival, even for such a hardy people, was a constant struggle. The Greenlandic climate, even during the medieval warm period, when they arrived, was unpredictable. Fluctuating temperatures, occasional brutal winters, and shifts in sea ice could decimate livestock, wipe out crops, and cut off access to hunting grounds. Imagine a winter so severe that your entire herd of cattle, the backbone of your existence, freezes to death. These weren't rare occurrences. They were ever-present threats, shaping every decision, every prayer. Then, around the 15th century, the picture begins to change dramatically. The vibrant Viking presence started to dwindle. The western settlement, the smaller and more northerly of the two, was abandoned sometime in the late 14th or early 15th century. Its farms, once bustling with life, fell silent, their turf walls slowly crumbling back into the earth. The eastern settlement, larger and seemingly more robust, followed suit shortly thereafter. By the mid-1400s, the once thriving Norse communities on Greenland were simply gone. No grand battle, no dramatic evacuation, just an eerie silence. The ships from Europe stopped coming, and the people ceased to be. The reasons for this disappearance are complex, a tapestry woven from multiple threads of environmental, economic, and social pressures. One of the most significant factors cited by experts today is climate change. Not the climate change we talk about today, but a natural, brutal shift known as the Little Ice Age. Starting around the 13th century and intensifying in the 14th and 15th centuries, global temperatures began to drop. For Greenland, this meant harsher, longer winters, more persistent sea ice, and a significantly shorter growing season. Farming, already a challenge, became nearly impossible in many areas. Pastures shrank, and the thin layer of topsoil, painstakingly cultivated, would have been severely impacted. Imagine trying to grow enough hay to feed your cattle through a 9-month winter when the summer is too short or too cold for a decent harvest. Livestock, which represented wealth and sustenance, would have struggled and died in increasing numbers. This wasn't just a slight inconvenience, it was an existential threat to their agricultural way of life. Sea ice also became a major problem. It blocked the fjords, making it harder to hunt seals and travel. More critically, it likely made the perilous sea route to Europe even more dangerous and less reliable. Economic factors also played a crucial role. The Greenlandic Vikings' main export, walrus ivory, was highly prized in Europe. But tastes and markets change. Around the time of their decline, there was a shift in European demand. Russian ivory, cheaper and easier to transport, began to flood the market. The rise of the European fur trade, particularly from Russia, also provided alternatives to Greenlandic furs. The unique high-quality Greenlandic exports suddenly weren't as valuable or as sought after. This meant less incentive for European traders to risk the long, dangerous journey to Greenland. Without this vital trade, the Norse in Greenland lost their lifeline to essential goods like iron and timber. Think of it like a remote village losing its only road to the outside world. Supplies dwindle, and isolation sets in. And what about those indigenous Inuit people, the Skrælings? It's highly probable that competition for resources intensified as the climate worsened. The Inuit were master Arctic hunters, better equipped and adapted to the extreme cold and the changing ice conditions. As the Norse struggled to adapt their farming and traditional hunting methods to the rapidly cooling climate, the Inuit would have had an advantage in accessing seals and other marine mammals, which became even more critical for survival. While direct warfare isn't heavily evidenced as the sole cause of their disappearance, constant tension and skirmishes, coupled with the Norse's dwindling numbers and resources, would have added another layer of pressure. Imagine living in a colder, hungrier world, knowing your neighbors are better at surviving it, and perhaps viewing you as competition for scarce food. Archaeological evidence helps us piece together this grim picture. Studies of skeletal remains show a significant shift in their diet over time. Early settlers ate a lot of dairy products and meat from their livestock, but in later centuries their diet became increasingly reliant on marine resources like seals, fish, and even birds. This suggests that their agricultural base was failing. Scientists can analyze the bones for carbon and nitrogen isotopes to reveal these dietary changes. It's like a biological diary etched in their very bones, telling us they were eating less of what they preferred and more of what they could get. Furthermore, the types of artifacts found at later settlement sites show a clear decline in imported goods, less European pottery, fewer iron tools, and less evidence of the luxury items they once traded for. This indicates that the vital trade connection with Scandinavia was weakening, perhaps even breaking down entirely. As their isolation grew, their ability to repair tools, build ships, or maintain a standard of living they were accustomed to would have plummeted. The ultimate climax of this story isn't a single catastrophic event, but a slow, agonizing slide into oblivion. The last written record of the Greenland Norse is a marriage documented in 1408. After that, silence. Imagine the last community, perhaps a small group of families, huddling together through another impossibly long cold winter, waiting for a ship that never arrived. The supplies would have run out. Their numbers would have dwindled from disease, starvation, or simply the harsh environment taking its toll. One by one, the fires in the longhouses would have gone out, until nothing remained but the wind whistling through abandoned ruins. The complete picture of their decline remains elusive. Was it simply a slow collective death due to environmental and economic pressures? Did some try to sail back to Iceland or Norway, perhaps perishing at sea? Did they intermarry with the Inuit and assimilate, leaving no distinct Norse legacy? The exact reasons for their disappearance are still being investigated, debated, and re-examined by new generations of scientists and historians. They dig through the earth, study ice cores, and analyze ancient bones, trying to coax the secrets out of the silent landscape. Their story serves as a poignant reminder of the challenges of human adaptation, not just to extreme environments, but to changing ones. It highlights the fragility of even the most resilient societies when faced with overwhelming environmental and societal pressures. The Viking civilization in Greenland was a triumph of ambition and ingenuity, a remarkable feat of human endurance against the odds. Yet, their ultimate fate is an enduring mystery etched into the icy landscape of Greenland. a stark testament to the unforgiving power of nature and the delicate balance of human existence. If you found this story fascinating, you'll love our next deep dive into lost civilizations.